Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Cost of living pressures remain the primary concern for the people of Pittwater, be it the daily commute via the Spit Bridge into the city or the school run in Mona Vale. Fuel is a not negotiable household item and expense for most people in the electorate. For our local small businesses, our tradies and delivery drivers, the price at the bowser is also the difference, and often the difference, between a profitable week and loss. This bill seeks to amend the Fair Trading Act 1987 and Fair Trading Regulation 2019 to ensure the integrity of the fuel check system. As we face a period of heightened economic uncertainty exacerbated by global volatility and a local fuel availability crisis, this legislation is timely and necessary. We all love the Fuel Check app, and it is a nation-leading tool, and that's been recognised by the Australian Economic Review, which confirmed that Australia has the world's best petrol price data through platforms like Fuel Watch and Fuel Check. However, the utility of this data depends entirely on its accuracy, and people want an app that they can rely on. This bill addresses a critical regulatory gap because while the Fair Trading Fuel Check Order 2026 does require reporting, this bill creates specific offences and new offences for failing to notify the Secretary of Prices or of fuel availability. It also increases penalties for existing offences and sets high penalties for the new offences also. I acknowledge also that the regional members here and the members of their community face even more concerns around fuel pricing, and particularly around the fuel app working in a way that it needs to provide them information. Many here have states have electorates that are huge, where their constituents have to drive many kilometres to fill up. There's no second station around the corner should fuel be unavailable, or if they wish to plan ahead and purchase fuel at a price that they should have the transparency on. As mentioned, this bill increases the maximum penalty for individuals to 500 penalty units or $55,000. This makes New South Wales legislation having a deterrent, which is, I note, the strongest in Australia, and surpasses the frameworks in the Northern Territory and Victoria. I want to also acknowledge that the opposition mentioned the bill that they did also bring, and I'm completely supportive of any fuel cap or any way to keep the price down, although I do have concerns around a fuel capping system where it may incentivise service station owners to set a price and sort of factor in a potential increase to that price and set it higher than necessary. That said, in terms of this bill, increasing transparency is very, very welcome. The Minister has, I think, previously spoken of, now this is an alliteration, Bowser Busters initiative. I think that was around the 12th of April, and it's similar to the pothole argument about reporting their own potholes. I don't believe that constituents, whether it be my constituents or other constituents, should bear the work of having to be effective compliance officers and reporting. So they need to have confidence in the systems that we have, whether that be contractors to fix potholes or an app where they can rely on. And it should be Fair Trading that makes sure that there is compliance with that information and that app. In Pittwater, the prices do vary, sometimes significantly, between service stations, and that's with both petrol and diesel. And so this information on the Fuel Check app is very important to help people plan and make decisions. People have written in from my constituency regarding fuel prices. Michael from Terry Hills has observed regular and significant petrol price disparities across the Northern Beaches, variations of up to 50 cents between stations, less than 10 minutes apart. And then also I've heard from a number of others, particularly community groups, who have seen, very sadly, a drop-off in volunteers, particularly groups like MWP Care, who assist older people in the community getting to appointments or helping them with their shopping. And although volunteers are reimbursed for their fuel costs, they have noticed concerns around volunteers and the increased cost of fuel. Also, companies like EasyLink, who service 9,500 clients on the Northern Beaches, have also expressed concern about fuel costs and the impact of the services they provide to vulnerable people in the community. Others have spoken to me around the need to increase their public transport use, commuter car parks being insufficient as we're seeing a rise in people choosing to use public transport. And I particularly want to mention Mona Vale, which just doesn't, it's a low to mid-rise town centre, and the commuter car park just doesn't meet the needs of those now switching and wanting to not drive and to use public transport. I also wanted to take the opportunity to mention people like Kari from Newport and others in the community who have asked why the government is not subsidising public transport and providing cheaper public transport. And I will take this opportunity to mention that in Queensland, public transport is 50 cents. That is part of their cost of living package. That cost of living package is completely funded by the coal levy, which is a progressive levy and a levy that is not replicated in a progressive nature here in New South Wales. I've spoken previously in this place about that being a lost opportunity to the tune of $6 billion, where had New South Wales adopted a coal levy that was progressive, similar to Queensland, we could now be enjoying 50-cent public transport. This is an issue that people may be more familiar with at a federal level, talking about the petroleum resource rent tax, something that members like the member for Warringah at a federal level, member for Mackellar, Senator Pocock have been talking about for a long time, that we need to get more from our resources, and that should be funneled into cost of living measures like cheap public transport. Also advocacy groups like the Australia Institute, Rod Sims, and of course the much loved punters politics. I also wanted to mention here about long-term independence from fossil fuels and the opportunity, as other members have mentioned, regarding EVs and making sure that electric vehicles and energy independence in the home to be able to charge those electric vehicles free from price shocks, whether that be on the grid or liquid fuel prices, is something that this government and all governments should be investigating further, particularly to reduce barriers to entry. And that's particularly around the investment costs that people need to be able to invest in some of these, like either an electric vehicle or assets on the house like solar and batteries. I know the member for Wakehurst has been calling for interest-free loans to assist those, to reduce those barriers and to assist all families being able to invest in an EV and all members of the community being able to invest in an EV or some of those other energy independent mechanisms. I do note that and welcome the $100 million that was announced by this government, and also the $3 million announced recently in regard to new charges. And I suppose in the context of this bill, I look forward to maybe the Fuel Check app being extended to also charging, whether that be private charges for EVs or public charges, that there's an opportunity to be able to have a look at how much it costs to charge your EV out and about and be able to do that cost comparison also. So I do very much welcome the transparency in regards to this bill and enhancing the Fuel Check app, and particularly on those key things that it is going to do, which is to make sure that anyone owning a service station must register, they must advise of the standard retail price of each fuel that is ordinarily available, and they must also make sure that the price that they advertise and that they put into the Fuel Check app is actually the price that they're delivering to consumers. And finally, noting as well going back to businesses and particularly those who are in the transport industry or in other industrial industries, that not only EVs for households and everyday people in New South Wales, but also the opportunities for trucks to be powered by renewable energy. And New Energy Transport has had 2 major trials going from Picton down to Canberra and back that really show promise in terms of electric trucks and being able to help with logistics around this country and this state. So we need to make sure that we look into the future and that we're planning not only for the energy crisis we're in now, but for energy independence into the future, and to make us truly independent in terms of energy. I commend the bill to the House. Thank you.
Thank you. I call the